Right. I watched the video Time for School 3, the part 1. It is on 4 different kids that go to school in Afghanistan, Brazil, India, and Japan. It begins by saying, public education is the basic right, and I feel like it's that way in the US, but after watching this video, it's not really like that elsewhere, because we all get it here, and yet not everyone has that freedom there. There are 75 million kids in the world that have no school to go to. And it's really the best thing. Like, education is key to success a lot of the time, but a lot of people don't even have that as an option. As it goes into Afghanistan, it talks about a girl who she wants to go to school and she's got the desire, yet the Taliban makes it like super dangerous for her, and so she can't actually go a lot of the time. And she didn't start school until she was 11 years old. And because of the Taliban, it makes it so that most women there are illiterate, and so they can't actually learn anything, and education isn't really key for them. They don't really think it matters, and so it doesn't affect their success for the most part. Yet she still wants to go to school. She wants to be there, and she wants to learn, and she feels like she'll end up being more successful overall in the long run if she has an education, even though it's really hard for women to go there, and it is super dangerous for her. And because, they've got too big of a family, it makes it harder for her to focus on school as well, because when she goes home, she has to do the housework, because boys there don't do housework. Boys are made fun of because it's the women's job. And so, she has school all day, and then as soon as she comes home, she works all day at the house. So it just makes it really hard for her to gain an education. And thinking of that in my own life, it seems so hard, because for me, school was always so important, and there were a lot of us, but boys did just as much housework as us girls did, and so it equaled itself out, so it's all okay, and it worked out in the end. Yet for her, it's not like that she had to do both, while the boys didn't really do much of anything. As it then goes to Brazil, it's of Jefferson, a little boy, and he wants to become a Kaká, which is a soccer hero there. Well, be like Kaká, who he was a soccer hero. He was, really great. But for there, I actually thought Brazil was going to be some really rich and awesome place or something like that, because I didn't know. But it's really, where he lived is pretty poor. They have this thing where it's Christmas without hunger. And it's like a £2 entry fee for them to go. And they celebrate, and Jefferson, the only Christmas present he got was from going to this celebration that Santa Claus came to, and he flew in through a helicopter, and that was the only Christmas he had, was by going to this. And there were always gunshots everywhere, and there were invasions coming from the drugs and the police and military, and they were all fighting over turf and who had what. He did end up living in a slum. One of the quotes that I really loved from them was, "Persistent, fight, go after your dreams." And I feel like that is so important, because it's true for everybody that you have to be persistent in whatever you're doing, and you have to fight for it, because it's going to be a big competition and all this kind of stuff, but to really go after your dreams. And I feel like it's a lot easier for someone in the US to be able to do that, because we have so many things available to us. We have so many options throughout our lives that it's easier for us to be successful, and it's easier for us to survive. Even in Brazil, 2/3 of kids drop out of school by the 8th grade. And here, you can't. We're not even allowed to drop out of school by then. We have to keep going. We have to continue with our education. It's required to stay in school until you're 16 or something. And then it goes into India, where it talks about Niraj. And these girls, they also pretty much never go to school. They are in charge of the housework, and then they get married at a very young age. That's what they grew up with. That's their tradition. That's their culture. And so Niraj, instead, she ends up going to school, and she doesn't talk to boys really ever, and she doesn't get that experience because she's so focused in school. She knows that it's important, even though it's harder for her to go to school and then come home and do housework. She has an older girl who also is attending school and pushes her to keep going to school and to keep getting her education and to work for it. And so they kind of have this team effort, and it's like a group of girls that all go to school together. And then a lot of time for them, they would work during the day, and then they would have school at nighttime. And so they'd have to do school at night in the dark and with their lamps and all this kind of stuff to make it work out for them. And so of course it's really hard for them as well. And then in Japan, he goes to a little boy named Ken, and I felt like learning about him, it seemed like he was the one most like those of us in the U.S., even though he, is from Japan, and it was really crazy. He ended up doing a long journey of he was in one of the most successful schools and programs, all this kind of stuff, that he would be very successful, and it was also super demanding. They actually recently, before he began school, they cut Japan to where it was more lenient. They didn't have school on Saturdays anymore, and I was like, what? They don't have school on Saturday anymore? I would never want school on Saturday. I never knew people had school on Saturdays. I always thought it was a free day, but apparently not in Japan. And so this little boy, he never missed school, and he was always there, and he went jogging every Sunday, and he pushed himself so hard, and his family felt like it was so important to push education and push success, because there's so much competition within the world that they made him do so much. He, though, was a normal kid at the same time. He thought school and games and food were all like a given, that everyone had them. And he didn't realize, that there are places elsewhere that don't have that right. And I feel like as I was a kid growing up, I thought the same thing, that I thought everyone had school, and I thought everyone had food on the table, and there wasn't an issue or even a thought that some people are starving elsewhere. And so I felt like, yeah, we are a lot like Japan, but not as much. We're not pushed quite as hard. We're not, being quite as successful as they are. But we do work as hard. I mean, we do work hard, and we do take it for granted, the blessings that we have, and the rights that we are given, and the freedom that we have here. So I feel like that's who we're closest to, and even I really liked how in Japan, the last day of the semester, they made it so that all of the kids had to clean the school. And so they would all work hard, and they would clean the school and make it all nice and perfect and everything. And I really liked that because it made them more grateful for their school, and it made it so that it was clean again for the next year and all this kind of stuff. And I feel like that would be something, good to have here in the U.S. as well, that we all, have to put forth the effort and clean our schools at the same time. That way we don't take school quite as much for granted. So overall, though, I thought the video was really great, and I thought it was nice to understand the education and the lifestyles of people in different countries, because, I've kind of lived in the bubble of just knowing what happens in the U.S.